Welcome to the pit you dug for yourself.
The sound of drunken laughter drifting through my kitchen window at 2 a.m. wasn't unusual anymore. What was unusual was what I heard next as I tinkered with my '79 Camaro's carburetor in the garage, trying to forget another sleepless night. "Jack's so pathetic," my wife Danielle's voice carried clearly through the still Maine air. "I mean, seriously, girls, if he knew I'd been screwing around with 5 different guys over the past 3 years, he still wouldn't have the balls to leave me." The socket wrench slipped from my hand and clattered onto the concrete floor. Lisa's shrill cackle followed. "Oh my God, Danny, you're terrible, but you're right. He's like a beaten dog, just takes whatever you dish out." "Remember when I told him I was working late all those nights last summer?" Danny's voice was getting louder, more animated with alcohol. "I was at Vince Calder's place. That man knows how to treat a woman, if you know what I mean." More laughter. Tara's voice joined in. "What about that dentist? Dr. Sam?" "Oh, please, Sam's just for the dental work, though he's not bad for a quickie in his office after hours. But Vince, that's the real deal. Did I tell you about his charger? We did it right there on the hood last week while Jack was at his construction job." I stood frozen in my garage, motor oil on my hands, listening to my wife of 15 years describe her affairs in graphic detail to her friends. The woman I'd worked 2 jobs to support through real estate school. The woman I'd trusted completely. "The best part," Danny continued, her voice dripping with malice, "is that Jack actually thinks we're happy. He brings me flowers every Friday like some lovesick teenager. It's almost sad." "What if he finds out?" Lisa asked. "He won't. And even if he did, what's he going to do? He's got no spine. No money of his own since I handle all our finances. Where's he going to go? Back to his mother's trailer?" The laughter that followed felt like ice water in my veins. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and walked quietly to the back door. Through the window, I could see them clearly. Danielle, blonde and perfectly made up even at this hour, gesturing wildly with a wine glass. Lisa, her brunette sidekick, hanging on every word. Tara, the quiet one who apparently wasn't so quiet when it came to gossip. "You know what the funniest part is?" Danny was saying. "He actually asked me last month if I was happy. Can you imagine? I told him I'd never been happier, and the idiot believed me." That's when I made my decision. I turned around, walked back to my workbench, and began planning. They were right about one thing. I was weak. But they were wrong about everything else. I spent the rest of the night in that garage, not working on the car, but thinking. By sunrise, I had a plan. It wasn't going to be quick, and it wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be thorough. The next morning, I got up early and changed the locks on our house. I emptied our joint checking account, all $47,000 of it, and opened a new account at a different bank. I called a locksmith, paid him double to come out at 7 a.m., and had every lock in the house changed within an hour. When Danielle came downstairs at 9, hungover and squinting, she found her key didn't work. Her phone started buzzing immediately. I opened the door and handed her a cup of coffee and a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Your eviction notice," I said calmly. "You've got 30 days to find somewhere else to live. The house is in my name, in case you forgot." She unfolded the paper and read it, her face going from confused to angry to panicked in about 10 seconds. "Jack, what the heck is this about?" "You're right, Danny. I am weak, but I'm not stupid. Game on." I closed the door and locked it. Through the window, I watched her stand on the porch for 5 minutes, pounding on the door and screaming. Then she got in her BMW and peeled out of the driveway. My phone started ringing immediately. I turned it off. The Red Lantern was exactly the kind of dive bar you'd expect to find in a small Maine town like Stillwater. Dark wood, dim lighting, and the kind of regulars who'd been sitting on the same stools since the Carter administration. It was also the best place in town to get information. "Jack Reardon, as I live and breathe," Big Mike called out as I walked in. Mike was my best friend from high school, a bear of a man who ran his own construction crew and had never met a problem he couldn't solve with either humor or brute force. "Heard you finally grew a pair." "News travels fast," I said, sliding onto the stool next to him. "Faster than you think. Danny's been calling everyone in town, crying about how you've lost your mind. Says you locked her out for no reason." Mike signaled the bartender for 2 beers. "Of course, Mrs. Rose has a different story. Mrs. Rose, the 70-year-old widow who lived across the street from me and knew everything that happened in Stillwater before it happened. If anyone had dirt on Danny's activities, it would be her. What's Mrs. Rose been saying? Oh, just that she's got some interesting photos on her phone. Something about a red Charger in your driveway when you weren't home. Mike grinned. She also mentioned she's been thinking about starting a podcast. Stillwater Scandals, she wants to call it. I almost smiled. Almost. Where's Danny staying? Lisa's place, from what I hear, but that won't last long. Lisa's husband isn't too happy about the arrangement, especially after Danny showed up crying at 8 in the morning. I pulled out my phone and showed Mike a photo I'd taken of our cell phone bill. Look at this. Mike squinted at the screen. Jesus, Jack. She's been texting someone called V about 300 times a month. And look at these call times, 2, 3 in the morning. That's not even the best part. I scrolled to another screenshot. I cloned her phone last night. Backed up everything to the cloud before I changed the locks. Is that legal? It's our family plan. I pay for it. I can access it. I showed him another screen. Look at this. It was a text thread between Danny and Lisa, dated just 2 weeks ago. Danny, if Jack ever finds out about any of this, we need to be ready. I've been documenting his anger issues in my diary. Lisa, you'll back me up, right? Lisa, of course. We'll say he's been threatening you, maybe even getting physical. No one will believe him over us. Danny, perfect. I've already talked to Sarah Mitchell about it. She says with the right story, I could get the house, alimony, everything. Mike's face darkened as he read. That's conspiracy, Jack. They were planning to frame you. Gets better. I showed him a voice memo from Danny's phone, recorded just 3 days ago. I hit play, keeping the volume low. Danny's voice came through clearly. God, Lisa, you should have seen Jack trying to be romantic last night. Flowers, candles, the whole pathetic routine. I just laid there thinking about Vince's hands on me. Jack's so boring in bed, it's like being with a dead fish. At least Vince knows what he's doing. Lisa's voice responded. How do you stand it? I close my eyes and think about real men. Speaking of which, I'm meeting Vince tomorrow at that motel on Route 9. Want to see the pictures from last time? Mike looked sick. Jesus, Jack. I'm sorry, man. Don't be sorry. Be helpful. I finished my beer. I need to know everything about Vince Calder, where he works, where he drinks, what he drives, who he knows, everything. That's easy. He's got that auto body shop on the edge of town. Thinks he's hot crap because he flips classic cars. Drives a '68 Charger, cherry red, keeps it parked right out front like he's advertising. Guy's a walking midlife crisis. What else? Well, rumor is he owes money to some serious people in Portland. Something about a poker game that went bad. Word is he's been looking for a quick score to pay them back. Interesting. Anyone else Danny's been seeing? From what Mrs. Rose tells me, there's been at least 3 different cars in your driveway over the past year. The Charger, Dr. Sam's Mercedes, and Pete Morrison's truck. Pete Morrison. Town councilman, married to a nice woman named Janet, 2 kids. If Janet found out about Pete and Danny, Mike, I need a favor. Name it. I need you to help me with something tomorrow night. Something that might get a little messy. Mike grinned. Count me in. What are we doing? We're going to give Vince Calder a bath he'll never forget. The annual Stillwater Harvest Festival was the biggest event of the year in our little town. Every October, Main Street filled with booths selling everything from apple cider to handmade quilts. There was live music, a beer garden, and this year's new addition, a big screen for showing local business advertisements and community announcements. I'd volunteered to help set up the audio-visual equipment, which gave me access to the control booth and, more importantly, the Wi-Fi network that connected to the big screen. Danielle, of course, had a booth. As one of the town's top real estate agents, or former top agent, since her boss had been getting some interesting anonymous tips about her recent behavior, she always participated in community events. Image was everything to Danny. I watched from across the street as she set up her display, Lisa helping her arrange brochures and hang a banner. They kept looking around nervously, probably wondering where I was and what I might do. They were right to be worried. At exactly 2 o'clock, when the festival was in full swing and the crowd was at its thickest, I walked into the control booth where my friend Tommy was managing the screen. Hey, Jack, good to see you out and about. How you holding up? Better than expected, Tommy. Mind if I check the Wi-Fi connection? Some people are complaining their phones aren't connecting. Sure thing, man. I don't understand any of that technical stuff anyway. I pulled out my laptop and connected to the network. Within minutes, I had access to the big screen's display system. I'd spent the morning preparing a special presentation using screenshots from Danny's phone and some creative editing. The screen was currently showing an ad for Morrison's Hardware, Pete Morrison's store. Perfect timing. I waited until I saw Danny and Lisa at their booth, surrounded by potential customers. Vince Calder was there too, leaning against the booth in his leather jacket, probably thinking he looked cool. Dr. Sam was browsing the medical clinic's booth nearby. Then I made my move. The hardware store ad faded out, and suddenly the big screen was displaying a text message conversation. Danny to V. Can't wait to see you tonight. Jack's working late again, the idiot. V to Danny. Meet me at the usual place. I'll show you what a real man can do. Danny to V. You're so much better than my pathetic husband. He has no idea what he's missing. A murmur went through the crowd. People started pointing at the screen, then looking around for Danielle. But I wasn't done. The next slide showed a photo, one of the ones Mrs. Rose had taken from her window. It clearly showed Vince's red Charger in my driveway, and two figures, in what could generously be called a compromising position against the car. The murmur became a roar. "Oh my God!" someone shouted. "Is that Danielle Reardon?" I looked across the street. Danny had gone white as a sheet. Lisa was frantically trying to pull her away from the booth, but people were already surrounding them, pointing and whispering. The third slide was the coup de grace, a voice message transcription. From Danny's voice memos. Jack is so pathetic. If he knew I was screwing 5 different men, he still wouldn't have the balls to leave me. I've been with Vince, Sam, Pete, and 2 others just this month. The fool brings me flowers every Friday while I'm planning my next hookup. The crowd went silent for about 3 seconds. Then all heck broke loose. I watched through the booth window as Janet Morrison marched across the street toward Pete, her face red with fury. She was carrying a funnel cake in one hand and a cup of hot cider in the other. "Pete Morrison!" she screamed. "You cheating bastard!" The funnel cake hit Pete square in the face. The hot cider followed immediately after. Vince tried to slink away, but the crowd had formed a circle around the whole group. Someone shouted, "Hey, isn't that the guy with the red car?" "That's him. That's the one screwing Jack's wife." Vince, being the genius he was, decided this was the perfect time to get aggressive. "Yeah, so what?" he yelled back. "Jack Reardon's a loser. His wife came to me because he couldn't satisfy her." Wrong move, Vince. Big Mike appeared out of nowhere. I'd positioned him perfectly and accidentally bumped into Vince, sending him stumbling backward into the mud wrestling pit that the fire department had set up for charity. Vince landed face first in the mud with a splash that sent dirty water flying onto his precious leather jacket. The crowd cheered. I chose that moment to make my grand entrance, walking calmly through the crowd toward my wife. "Hello, Danny," I said pleasantly. "Enjoying the festival?" She looked at me with pure hatred. "You did this." "Did what?" "I'm just here for the apple cider and the community spirit." I looked around at the crowd, all of whom were staring at us. Though I have to say, this year's entertainment is really something special. Dr. Sam tried to slip away, but Mrs. Rose, bless her heart, was ready with her phone. "Dr. Sam!" she called out loudly. "Smile for the camera! This is going straight to my new podcast!" Sam froze like a deer in headlights. Lisa, meanwhile, was trying to do damage control. "This is all fake!" she shouted. "Jack made this up! He's been threatening Danny for months!" I pulled out my phone and held it up so everyone could see the screen. "Funny you should mention that, Lisa." I hit play on another voice memo. Lisa's own voice came through the phone speaker, clear as a bell. "If Jack ever finds out, we'll destroy him. We'll say he hit you, threatened you, whatever it takes. No one will believe him over us. We'll take him for everything he's got." Lisa's face went from red to white in about 2 seconds. That's taken out of context," she stammered. "Really? What context makes conspiracy to commit perjury sound better?" The crowd was eating this up. Someone started a slow clap. Others joined in. Vince finally climbed out of the mud pit, looking like a drowned rat in a leather jacket. He pointed a muddy finger at me. "This isn't over, Reardon." "Oh, Vince," I said, smiling for the first time in days. "It hasn't even started." The Stillwater Construction Company's main site was a half-built office complex on the outskirts of town, all concrete and steel beams reaching into the darkness like skeleton fingers. I'd been working there part-time for the past year, picking up extra money while Danny spent our savings on her girls' trips and professional development courses. Now I knew what she'd really been spending money on. It was just past midnight when I got the text I'd been waiting for. Unknown. Number: "You think you're smart, a-hole? Meet me at the construction site. Time to settle this like men. I showed the message to Big Mike, who was sitting in his truck next to mine in the site's parking lot. Right on schedule, Mike said. You sure about this plan? Trust me. Vince is exactly the kind of guy who thinks he can intimidate someone with his fists. He's also exactly the kind of guy who doesn't think things through. We'd spent the afternoon preparing. The portable toilets that served the construction site were scheduled to be cleaned tomorrow morning, which meant they were currently full and ripe. Mike had used his crane to position one of them directly over the foundation pit for the building's elevator shaft, a hole about 8 feet deep and 10 feet wide, currently filled with about 2 feet of muddy water from the recent rain. The plan was simple. Lure Vince into the portable toilet, then tip it into the pit. Humiliating, yes. Dangerous, no. Illegal? Probably, but I was past caring about that. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Where are you, coward? I'm here. I looked across the site and saw headlights. Vince's Charger, naturally. The man had no subtlety. Showtime, I told Mike. I walked across the construction site, making sure to stay in the shadows. Vince was standing next to his car, smoking a cigarette, and trying to look tough. He'd cleaned up since the festival, but there were still mud stains on his leather jacket. There you are, he called out when he saw me. Ready to apologize for humiliating me in front of the whole town? Actually, Vince, I was thinking you might want to apologize to me. You know, for screwing my wife on my property. He laughed. Your wife came to me, buddy. Said she was tired of being married to a limp Johnson loser who couldn't satisfy her. Interesting. Is that before or after you told her about the gambling debts you owed to those guys in Portland? His face changed. How do you know about that? Small town, Vince. People talk, especially when you're 3 months behind on your shop rent and your bookmaker is asking around about your whereabouts. That's none of your business. It became my business when you decided to use my wife as your personal stress relief. I started walking toward him. But hey, I'm a reasonable guy. Maybe we can work something out. What kind of something? Well, you're obviously in a tight spot financially, and I'm obviously in need of some closure. So here's what I'm thinking. You leave town permanently, and I don't share some very interesting information I have about your insurance claims. What insurance claims? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken earlier. It was a picture of his Charger's odometer, taken through the window while it was parked at the festival. See, Vince, I did a little research after our mud wrestling incident. Turns out, you filed a claim last year for hail damage on your car. Claimed it had only 45,000 miles on it. But look at this photo, 67,000 miles. That's insurance fraud, buddy. Felony charges. His face went dark. You son of a witch. Now, no need for name-calling. I'm just suggesting you might want to consider relocating. Maybe somewhere far from Maine. I hear Florida's nice this time of year. That's when he made his move, lunging at me with his fists up. I'd been expecting it. I sidestepped and let his momentum carry him past me, then stuck out my foot. Vince went down hard, rolling across the muddy ground. Careful, Vince. Construction sites can be dangerous. He got up even angrier now and charged again. This time I was ready with the next phase of the plan. You know what, Vince? If you need a minute to cool off, there's a bathroom right over there. I pointed to the portable toilet we'd positioned over the pit. I don't need to cool off. I need to kick your A. He came at me again, and again I stepped aside, but this time I grabbed his jacket and used his own momentum to spin him around, sending him stumbling directly toward the portable toilet. Might want to watch your step, I called out. Vince, being the brilliant tactician he was, decided to use the portable toilet as cover. He ducked behind it, probably thinking he could ambush me from there. That's when Big Mike fired up the crane. The mechanical arm swung over and hooked onto the top of the portable toilet. Vince, realizing what was happening, tried to run, but his feet slipped on the muddy ground. What the heck? The crane lifted the toilet, with Vince clinging to it, up into the air and over the foundation pit. Last chance, Vince, I shouted. Leave town or take a bath. Go to heck. Mike released the crane's hook. The portable toilet, with Vince still holding onto it, dropped 8 feet into the muddy pit with a splash that could probably be heard in the next county. I walked to the edge of the pit and looked down. Vince was standing waist-deep in muddy water and construction debris, covered in things I didn't want to think about, sputtering and cursing. You know, Vince, that's exactly where you belong, I said. In the crap where you've always been. I'll sue you. I'll have you arrested. With what evidence? You texted me to meet you here for a fight. There are no witnesses except Mike, and he's going to say you fell in while trying to attack me. Self-defense, really. I tossed a rope down to him. Here, climb out, get in your car, and drive away. If I see you in Stillwater again, the next pit will be deeper. It took him 20 minutes to climb out, and when he did, he looked like something that had crawled out of a sewer, which technically he had. He didn't say another word, just walked to his car, got in, and drove away, leaving muddy footprints and a smell that would probably linger for weeks. Think he'll be back? Mike asked. Not if he's got any sense left. I watched the Charger's taillights disappear into the night. But then again, we're not exactly dealing with a genius here. My phone buzzed. A text from Danny. Danny, I know what you did to Vince. This has gone too far, Jack. We need to talk. I showed the message to Mike. What are you going to tell her? I typed back. We'll talk when you're ready to tell the truth about everything. All of it. Then I turned off my phone. Come on, Mike. Let's go get a drink. I have a feeling tomorrow's going to be an interesting day. The Red Lantern was busier than usual for a Tuesday night. Word had gotten around about the festival incident and Vince's mysterious disappearance, and everyone wanted to hear the latest gossip. I was holding court at the bar, nursing a beer and enjoying the first genuine smiles I'd had in months. So then, I was telling the assembled crowd, Vince climbs out of that pit looking like he'd been wrestling with a septic tank, which technically he had. The crowd erupted in laughter. Even Officer Dugan, who probably should have been asking more pointed questions about the incident, was chuckling into his coffee. Jack, he said, I probably don't want to know the details, but please tell me nobody got seriously hurt. Just his pride, officer. Just his pride. That's when the door opened and Danielle walked in, followed by Lisa and, surprisingly, Pete Morrison. Pete looked like he'd been through heck, which made sense considering Janet had thrown him out of the house after the festival revelation. The bar went quiet. Danny walked straight up to me, her face a mask of cold fury. She was wearing her best business suit and had her hair done, the full power outfit. She was planning to make a scene. Jack, she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. We need to talk. Now. We're talking, I said calmly, not getting up from my stool. What's on your mind, Danny? What's on my mind is that you've lost your freaking mind. First, you lock me out of my own house. Your house? I interrupted. Funny, the deed says otherwise. Then you humiliate me in front of the entire town with those fake text messages. Fake? I pulled out my phone. Would you like me to show everyone the originals? And now you've assaulted Vince. I could have you arrested. Officer Dugan cleared his throat. Actually, ma'am, Mr. Calder never filed a complaint. In fact, he seems to have left town rather suddenly, packed up his shop and everything. Danny's face flushed red. That doesn't matter. Jack is harassing me. He's been threatening me for weeks. Really? I stood up now, facing her directly. In front of all these witnesses, Danny, I want you to tell everyone exactly how I've been threatening you. She looked around the bar, realizing she had everyone's attention. He changed the locks on our house. My house, I corrected, which I'm legally entitled to do. He stole money from our joint account? I withdrew my own money from an account I opened and funded, also perfectly legal. He's been following me. Have I? When? Where? I looked around the bar. Has anyone here seen me following Danielle around town? Silence. Lisa stepped forward, trying to help her friend. He's been harassing both of us, making threatening phone calls. I pulled out my phone again. That's interesting, Lisa, because I have a record of every call I've made in the past month. Would you like Officer Dugan to take a look? Lisa's face went pale. But you know what I do have, I continued, are recordings of some very interesting conversations, like the one where you and Danny planned to frame me for domestic violence, or the one where Danny described her affairs in graphic detail. Those are private conversations, Danny shouted. You can't use those. Actually, I can. They were recorded on equipment I pay for, in my house, and they document criminal conspiracy. I looked at Officer Dugan. Isn't that right, officer? Dugan looked uncomfortable, but nodded. If someone's planning to file false police reports, that would be a crime, yes. Pete Morrison finally spoke up. Look, Jack, we all made mistakes here. Maybe we can work something out, man to man. I turned to look at him. Man to man. Pete, you're a married man with 2 kids who was screwing my wife. What exactly do you think we have to discuss? Janet threw me out, he said miserably. I lost my family because of this. No, Pete. You lost your family because you're a cheating scumbag. I just made sure everyone knew about it. The bar was dead silent now. You could hear a pin drop. Danny tried one last desperate play. Jack, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can go to counseling. We can fix this. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved for 15 years. This woman I'd worked 2 jobs to support. This woman who'd been planning to destroy me. Danny, I said quietly, do you remember what you said to your friends that night? About how I'd never leave you no matter what you did? She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. You were right. I wouldn't leave you? I paused, letting that sink in. But I never said I wouldn't make you leave me. I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. These are divorce papers. No fault, 50-50 split of assets, which, by the way, includes documentation of every penny you spend on your affairs. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts for your boyfriends, all of it. She took the envelope with shaking hands. You have a choice, Danny. You can sign these papers and walk away with half of what's legitimately ours. Or you can fight me, and I'll make sure every detail of your affairs becomes public record in divorce court. Every text message, every photo, every voice recording, all of it. Jack, please. I'm not finished. I looked around the bar, making sure everyone was listening. See, Danny, you always underestimated me. You thought I was weak. You thought I was stupid. You thought I'd never fight back. I stepped closer to her. You were wrong about everything except one thing. I am weak. I was weak enough to love you unconditionally for 15 years while you treated me like garbage. I was weak enough to work 2 jobs so you could have nice things while you were screwing other men behind my back. I was weak enough to trust you completely while you were planning to destroy me. The tears were flowing freely now. But here's what you didn't count on, Danny. Weak doesn't mean stupid, and it sure as heck doesn't mean helpless. I turned to address the entire bar. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to make a toast. I raised my beer bottle. To my wife, Danielle Reardon. She always said I'd never leave her. She was absolutely right. I took a sip of beer, then looked back at her. I didn't leave you, Danny. I made you leave me. There's a difference. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. Then, another person. Then another. Soon the entire bar was applauding. Danielle looked around at all the faces of people she'd known for years, people she'd considered friends, and saw nothing but judgment and contempt. She turned and ran out of the bar, Lisa trailing behind her. Pete Morrison looked at me one more time. Jack, Pete, I said calmly, if I were you, I'd focus on figuring out how to explain to your kids why Daddy doesn't live at home anymore. Because that's a conversation that's going to happen whether you want it to or not. He left without another word. Officer Dugan approached me. Jack, I have to ask, are you planning any more construction site incidents? Officer, I'm planning to go home to my house, sleep in my own bed, and start figuring out what the rest of my life looks like, peacefully and legally. He nodded. Good to hear, but just so you know, if anyone files a complaint, I'll have to investigate. Understood, but something tells me there won't be any complaints. I was right. Vince never came back to Stillwater. Pete Morrison moved to Portland a month later. Dr. Sam quietly closed his practice and relocated to another state. And Danielle? She signed the divorce papers 3 days later and moved back to Boston, where she'd grown up. I heard she tried to start over in real estate there, but word travels fast in small industries. Her reputation had preceded her. 6 months later, I was sitting in the same spot at the Red Lantern when Mrs. Rose approached me with a big smile on her face. Jack, dear, I have some news for you. What's that, Mrs. Rose? My podcast is a huge success. Stillwater Scandals has over 50,000 subscribers now. And guess what the most popular episode is? I grinned. Let me guess. That's right. The Festival Revenge. It's been downloaded over 250,000 times. She leaned in conspiratorially. I've been getting interview requests from other podcasts. They want to know all about the man who brought down the Stillwater cheating ring. The Stillwater cheating ring? Oh, yes. That's what they're calling it now. Apparently, your little investigation inspired 3 other wives in town to start looking into their husbands' activities. We've had 4 more divorces since yours. I shook my head, laughing. Mrs. Rose, you're a dangerous woman. Just keeping the community informed, dear. Just keeping the community informed. As I walked home that night, past the house where Danielle used to live, past the empty lot where Vince's shop used to be, past all the places where my old life used to exist. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Danielle had been right about one thing. I never would have left her. I loved her too much, trusted her too completely, believed in our marriage too deeply. But she'd been wrong about everything else. I wasn't weak. I wasn't stupid. And I sure as heck wasn't helpless. I was just a man who'd finally learned the difference between love and respect. And once I learned that difference, everything else became crystal clear. She thought she knew me. She thought she could predict my every move, manipulate my every emotion, control my every response. She was wrong. And now everyone in Stillwater, heck, everyone listening to Mrs. Rose's podcast knew exactly how wrong she'd been. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I disagree. Revenge is a dish best served publicly, thoroughly, and with a side of justice. And in Stillwater, Maine, justice was served.